Now, I know the title of this video sounds like the most first worldist problem ever, and in ways it definitely is, but there are larger problems that stem from this that have a much greater impact on many people's lives that I want to talk about here. But for now, let's focus on the individual experience of this whole there are too many video games things. And this comes from the perspective of someone that is a very big hardcore gamer, of course, but also a variety gamer. You know, a lot of people, they're perfectly content playing just one or a small handful of games for thousands and thousands of hours. But personally, that's not me. I can't really play one game for more than like a month, maybe two tops, before I get my fill of it and I want to move on to something else. Especially in the indie game space. I'm a really big fan of indie games. That's the majority of what I play these days. And there's always so many new ones coming out. They look so cool. I want to play them all. And that's really the problem. There are so many incredible games coming out these days that you just can't keep up. It's impossible. Like, forget about even money. I don't have the time to play anywhere near all the games that I want to. And this is where it's coming into that, like, okay, Mr. First World Problem, but to me, games aren't just, like, a hobby. They're not just a pastime that I like to do for fun. Like, games are a really important art form that I care about really deeply, and I want to explore that art form as much as I can. I want to see what people make, what can be done with this medium. I want to engage with people's artistic expression. It's something that is important to me as a person. But unfortunately, there are probably countless fantastic games out there that I'm never going to get to experience. And at this point, I've kind of made my peace with that, but I want to talk about it because there's probably a lot of other people out there in a similar situation that haven't really faced the music with what all this means. Like, if you're someone that has a Steam wishlist of over 100 games, if you really be honest with yourself, you know you're never going to get through that. That wish list is never going to get down to zero. You are never going to get through a backlog that size. And it's a bit of a morbid thing to say, but I think it's important to think about these kinds of things, that you might look at all those games and say, one day I'm going to play them all, and they're going to be super cool, super great, I'm going to love it. But the reality is that you are probably going to die with many, many, many games that you want to play having never been touched. That's why a frequent thing I say whenever I see a cool-looking video game that I'm excited about is, man, that game looks awesome. Hopefully one day I can play it before I die, because that's legitimately how I need to think about things now. Because, you know, time is your most valuable resource, and you're only ever running out of it, and you have an even more limited amount of time to play video games. So if you do have time to play games, in my opinion, you should spend that on the best games you possibly can. This is part of the reason why I can often come off like an elitist or a snob, or like I have really high standards, because the way I see it, there are more 9 out of 10 fantastic games out there than I could ever get through in my entire life. So why would I ever bother with a 7 out of 10? My limited amount of time across my entire life to play video games is valuable to me, and I don't want to spend it on an experience that won't impact me as strongly as something else. Because, you know, I see trailers of lots of indie games at, like, showcases or just, like, browsing around online, and I see so many games out there that look perfectly good. They look fine, they look fun. I'd probably play them and have a good time with them, but they look very derivative, not very original, not really doing anything new, and they don't look like exceptionally better than other similar games I've already played. So to me, if you're not, like, phenomenal or doing something really different than what I've already played before, I'm just like, what's the point of playing you? And I feel so bad saying that kind of thing, but that's just how I look at things now. Like, as an example, you could take a game like Evil West, which is a third-person, over-the-shoulder, like, melee action game with some shooting elements. It looks kind of cool, and it's definitely in my wheelhouse. It's the kind of game that I like to play. But I don't have any interest in picking up Evil West or playing it, because honestly, it just doesn't really look that great. Like, I'd probably play it and enjoy it, but would I enjoy it as much as The Wonderful 101, which I've yet to play, and is a game by Platinum, the developer of many of my favorite games in this kind of genre? Probably not. I'd probably be better off buying and spending my time with The Wonderful 101. So why would I buy Evil West? Even after The Wonderful 101, there are numerous other games with this kind of style that just have me way more interested. I just don't have room in my life for a game that looks alright. And this is where we start to get into larger problems, because this kind of thing, even if you don't have the exact same kind of mentality as me, everyone picks and chooses what games they play and what games they're interested in. And with such an abundance of games nowadays, it's hard for any one game to get enough attention and traction to get the sales it needs to do well. I mean, we've all been seeing that the games industry is not in the healthiest state right now, with all the layoffs and also just studio closures in general, not just the big stuff, but even some small indie teams I've started to see closing down, and that's really sad. But you gotta ask, why is this happening? And, you know, there's been a lot of big AAA flops lately, and a big part of that, I think, is just that they're making junk that no one wants to play, like Gotham Knights. Everyone knew that game was gonna flop. You knew it, I knew it, probably the publisher knew it, and they were just like, well, we already put money into it, gotta get it out the door. So, of course, that's one big problem, is these companies are completely out of touch with what players actually want to play, and they just trust their focus groups and their market research, and just copy what everybody else is doing until you make the most generic, uninteresting thing ever. Like, what was that Sony game? I don't even remember what it's called, but you know the one that, like, shut down only weeks after it came out? People are just tired of this formulaic garbage, and I think that's a good thing. But it does mean that a lot of money is being lost, and unfortunately that means that a lot of developers are losing their jobs. Now, it is possible that in the long term this might actually be good for video games, because companies will start to realize that making this crap doesn't work, it doesn't sell, people don't want it, and they start thinking, hey, maybe we should actually make, like, fun games that people want to play, and we'll get better games coming out in the future. And another factor, I think, is that a lot of AAA games have been just, like, way overproduced for a while. You know, I've heard about, like, high-profile game developers saying for, like, over a decade that AAA games were not sustainable because they just get more and more expensive over time, and you need even more sales, you gotta do all the microtransaction stuff just to turn a profit. And you always hear people saying that we can't keep doing this, it's not a viable business model, blah, blah, blah. And I've always just been like, hi, no one ever told you to spend $1 gazillion on a video game. Like, I don't need my game to have ultra-realistic graphics and be 350 hours long. In fact, I actively don't want that because it means a lot of games waste their budgets on bloat and crap that usually ends up making them worse, you know? Gotta hit those playtime hours, so gotta fill the game with a bunch of garbage repetitive filler. And we gotta make sure that every individual blade of grass is fully modeled and it blows in the wind realistically and the snow deforms as people walk in it and all this shit. And I just go, okay, yeah, whatever. Does any of that make the game more fun to play? And the answer is no. So many AAA games, I think, waste their budgets on garbage that doesn't matter. And I actually think this is a big part of the reason that Nintendo does so well, because their games are obviously very big and polished and well made, but they don't overproduce their games. You know, they look nice, but they're not the most realistic, oh, watch as Link's clothes realistically fold and react to the wind. That shit doesn't matter, so they don't do it. They just make the game look good, and that's all you need to do. So if companies are saying that AAA games are unsustainable and they can't keep making games like that, I'm like, good, great, I'm really happy about that. Let's stop doing that. Stop trying to make this technical showcase of, oh, we have the biggest open world ever. And instead, you focus on making quality games that are fun and have stories that are worth caring about and that people actually want to play. Of course, if that even were to happen, there are going to be some pains as that transition occurs. There's going to be more studio closures, more flops, and there's going to be an experimentation period where people try to figure out what is the right balance of the right budget size and how do you make games on that scale and whatever. It will be messy and there will be problems, but I think in the long term, something like that would actually probably be really promising for games. That's the exact kind of thing you'd see in the indie game space already. They don't have the giant budgets that allow them to make the giantest, biggestest, prettiest world ever, so instead they focus on quality experiences. But as I said, indie games have been struggling as well, and there's multiple aspects to that too. One big factor, I think, that affects all levels of games is just the economy and how things are right now. You know, stuff is tough, and so people have less money to spend on games, meaning they have to be more selective with what they choose to play. Like going back to what I was saying about Evil West, in my case it's more of a time issue, but whether it's time or money, the end result is the same. That's one less sale that game is getting that it could be getting otherwise, if not for the fact that there are so many other games out there fighting for my attention. How do you stand out? How do you get sales when there are literally thousands of other video games coming out every single year? If you think about it, the world we live in now is very weird compared to the past when it comes to entertainment. Like, let's say we rewind back to pre-electricity days, and you're a reader, you really love reading books. That market and that world was very different than what it's like now. There was no internet, there was no global marketplace, there were not literally dozens of books coming out every single day. Instead, you had the limited selection of books that were available in your local area, and maybe you could import some stuff if you were wealthy, and you would read the books that were available to you, and then you would just have to wait until new books came out. And, oh, that author that I really like has a new book. I'm gonna pick it up and read it. I've been looking for something new to read. That's not the world we live in anymore. Whether it be books, or video games, or movies, or comics, or anything, any form of entertainment out there, you don't have to wait for new stuff anymore because there's so much available, which really reduces the value of new things when you think about it. If you're someone that has a big backlog of stuff that you still haven't gotten to, then you don't need to pick up anything new. Personally, I could probably go over a year, maybe even 2, without buying any new video games, because I just have a bunch of stuff already that I picked up on sale or whatever. So what's my motivation to pick up a game when it's brand new? Especially considering that that's the worst time you really can pick up a game. Because if you just wait a while, then you get discounts, the prices go down, you get patches and DLC, usually gets bundled all together at a cheaper price a couple of years down the line. Like Doom Eternal here. This is a game that I've been looking forward to playing for a long time. I love Doom 2016. This game looked even more awesome. Everyone was saying that it's like the best game ever, and I was like, hell yeah, dude. And it's only now, at the time of making this video, 5 years after it came out, that I finally picked it up and started playing it. And it was like $20 with all DLC included. This is a big part of the reason I'm so behind the times with games. There are so many games that have come out in the past, like, 2-3 years that I just have not gotten around to, despite the fact that I really want to play them. Haven't played the Elden Ring DLC, haven't played a bunch of Nintendo stuff I've been meaning to play, Metroid Dread, Prime Remaster, Tears of the Kingdom, Echoes of Wisdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Haven't played any of the new Resident Evil games, RE3 Remake, 4 Remake, 8. Haven't played Alan Wake 2 yet, and I haven't played literally like hundreds of awesome-looking indie games that I've been meaning to get to forever. Not to mention, retro games are a whole other avenue of things to keep you busy with your time. Like, personally, I haven't played much of the Mega Man series, and I've been meaning to catch up on it for a long time. Plus, these problems are not happening exclusively to video games. Pretty much every form of entertainment is facing similar issues. And the fact that, you know, people are into more than just one thing means that you're even more strapped for time as you try to parse out whether you want to play a game or read a book or watch a movie or whatever. So when you have all these other options, it's kind of baffling to think, why would anyone spend full price for a brand new video game? And I say that obviously as someone who does spend full price for brand new video games here and there, to which the answer is, it's a game that I really, really want to play. You know, it looks especially fantastic, and I'm really excited for it, and I can't wait. But for the most part, I'm generally a pretty patient gamer, as you can tell by that list of games that I just mentioned that I haven't gotten to yet. I don't need to get on things right away. I got other stuff I could play in the meantime. It's fine. I'll just wait for it to go down in price and pick it up on sale and play it when I feel like playing it. In the meantime, I can play other stuff I already have, or pick up other games that I've been waiting on for cheap when they go on sale. with a bit of patience, you can play lots of video games for cheap. Like, I don't really buy that many games that often. I don't spend that much money on games for the most part. And I still have an endless backlog that I can't get through, which is great for me as a gamer, but it is incredibly bad for the people that make and sell these games. If everyone adopted this kind of mentality, then every game would flop, and it would not be worth it for people to make video games. And as much as I know that I'm contributing to this problem, I do think that it's a smart, sound way as a consumer to approach the video game industry. So there's a bit of an irreconcilable problem there. Like, when you make a new video game, you're not just competing with the other new video games out there. You also need to compete with every other video game that already exists that people could buy and play instead. And that is an extremely competitive market. And it makes me pretty worried about the future of the games industry. Already with the direction the economy is going in, that itself is going to be a problem. But on top of that, you have this issue of new games not having as much value as they used to. And I think that's a big part of the reason that FOMO has become such a tool that a lot of new entertainment uses to try to get people to engage with it. You know, you go on social media, you see everybody else playing it, they're part of the conversation, they're talking, they're having fun, you're missing out. We got all these limited time events and all these cool things, and you're not going to be a part of it unless you pick up the game brand new day one. But personally, as someone that doesn't really do social media, I'm pretty immune to FOMO, so I just pick up whatever I feel like picking up. And I feel like as people start to hit more financial hardship, probably a lot more people are gonna care less and less about FOMO in the future. And that is gonna potentially lead to a pretty dire state for game developers and publishers out there who want to try to sell new games to a market that is more than well covered with what's already out there. And as far as new stuff goes, the only way I think you're gonna be able to really do well is if you have something pretty exceptional that really gets people's attention, which is not going to be most games. You know, we may be at the point where we're starting to hit the carrying capacity of the video game industry. You know, when you have an ecosystem that can support so much life, but when that ecosystem is new, like the games industry, then at first it flourishes and really grows a lot, but eventually it hits a point where it becomes unsustainable, and there's a massive dying off until things level out to a sustainable degree. And the games industry has been growing since its inception, but we've actually started to peak now. You can see like Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, talking about how the video game industry has not grown in terms of bringing in new players every year. It's actually started to level out, which is a major problem. One that might actually get worse into the next several years, because think about this, with all these layoffs that have been happening at all these big companies, you have a lot of experienced developers that are probably going to be starting their own studios and making their own games. So in the next several years, we're probably going to see a lot of new games coming out of studios from industry veterans. That could make the saturation problem even worse, and a lot of these games might flop or they might cause other games to flop. And it could also make it really difficult for new developers to get their foot in the door because they have to go up against all these other experienced developers making all their games. And let me tell you, as someone that would like to eventually make video games, it's pretty concerning. But what can I say? I love this stuff, so I'm not giving up, but I guess we'll just have to see how things play out. It's a big, complicated problem, and there's really no easy solutions to things. I think the best thing that we collectively can do going forward is, for developers and publishers, you gotta make the best games you possibly can. The bar has risen a lot, and if you want to compete, then you need something special. And as an extra tip for indie developers, don't make online multiplayer games. I'm sorry, it sucks to hear, but I've been around this industry for long enough to know how things work. Most likely your game is not gonna be a Dead by Daylight or a Rocket League or whatever. The vast majority of online indie games just completely fail. the amount that succeed are negligible. It's really just not worth it to make an online game unless you have those millions of dollars from a big publisher backing you. Which obviously sucks, of course, but it just is how it is. So indie developers, focus on single player, co-op, local multiplayer. Don't try to do online, please. I've seen it happen so many times that it's gotten to the point that when I see a cool new online indie game, I'm like, man, that game looks awesome. Shame it's gonna flop. And then it flops, and I just shrug my shoulders. And as players, what we gotta do to help support the game industry and the developers is buy games at full price, brand new. At least for indie games. I'd like to say the same thing for AAA games, but as we have started to see, even if you have a game that's a big success, you'll still get hit with shutdowns and layoffs. So, just do what you want about those. A lot of people these days have their brand loyalties where they'll buy games from a certain series that they love, but personally, I have adopted a mentality of trying to support the people that make awesome things, more so than any individual franchise. Like the Game Bakers, for example. They're a developer that I really like. Small French studio responsible for games that I've really loved, like Fury and Haven, which are both very different kinds of games from each other, but they're both excellent, and they have a new game that they're working on now. It's coming out soon. It also is very different than what they've done before, but I have faith in the Game Bakers that it's probably going to be fantastic, so probably going to pick it up, just based on the fact that it's them making it. That's what I care a lot more about these days, pedigree. If you've made some of my favorite games in the past, then I'm a lot more comfortable spending full price on your games. And I think that leads to a very healthy and happy relationship between both player and developer. They make awesome games that I love and really appreciate, so I reward them with my money. Seems like a pretty sustainable business model to me, wouldn't you say? Obviously, I'm no financial analyst or anything, and I could have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's fine. But I hope you at least found this whole discussion interesting, and I'd love to hear what people have to say in the comments.